Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgie Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the death toll of an attack on a village in Burkina Faso rises to at least 160. Armed men shot people and burned homes down in Solhan last week. Nearly 800 people have fled to nearby towns in search of refuge. Also, the US has brought in visa restrictions on those it believes are standing in the way of the peaceful resolution of Cameroon's violent Anglophone crisis. Both sides in the conflict have been accused of atrocities since fighting began in 2017. And tremors from the devastating volcanic eruption in DR Congo last month have subsided, and people from the city of Goma have started returning. About 400,000 fled after Mount Nyiragongo blew its top. But first, more than 7,000 people have fled northern Burkina Faso in the wake of the most deadly massacre the country suffered in recent years. At least 160 people were killed in the village of Solhan on Saturday after gunmen stormed the community. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has faced mounting violence from armed extremists, which has forced more than 1.2 million people from their homes over the last 2 years alone.
Still shaken, survivors in Solhan recover in one of the region's hospitals after the deadliest attack in Burkina Faso in the last few years.
Ce n'était pas en tout cas facile. C'était vraiment lamentable parce que trop de dégâts. Ils ont trop tué sans trier, ni femmes, ni enfants. Bon, ils ont tué, ils ont brûlé. Tous les biens qu'ils ont vus, en tout cas, ils ont saccagé.
On Friday night, armed men launched an assault on the village, killing at least 160 people. The attack is yet to have been claimed. Many have criticised authorities for not responding quickly enough. During a visit to Solhan on Monday, the country's Prime Minister vowed to improve security.
Nous allons nous réorganiser pour pouvoir apporter la réponse appropriée à la situation. Cette incurie que nous constatons aujourd'hui ne restera pas impunie.
Solhan is located in the so-called free border zone in the Sahel, a region which has been repeatedly hit by jihadist attacks. Over the past 6 years, authorities have tried to clear the area of militants, but the attacks have become more frequent and deadly. Since 2015, more than 1,400 people have been killed and more than 1 million displaced.
Twin rallies were held in Bamako and Paris on Tuesday in support of a French journalist being held hostage in Mali. Olivier Dubois was abducted in early April by GSIM, the largest jihadist group in the Sahel. In Mali, former Foreign Minister Tibeli Dramé joined Dubois' colleagues and friends at the Maison de la Presse in the capital in a show of support. Dozens also turned out in the French capital, calling for a ramping up of efforts to secure Dubois' release. The 46-year-old has been living in Mali since 2015. Amongst those in Paris was Florence Aubenas, another former French hostage. He says that demonstrations do make a difference.
When you're taken hostage, you really have the feeling of having fallen into a hole, that everyone has forgotten you. You are no longer in contact with anyone or with your country. That's what it feels like. So knowing that people are there for you, to get that kind of message, that people are here thinking of you, it's essential, and that's why we're here today.
South Africa's health minister was placed on special leave on Tuesday in connection to an investigation into the alleged improper awarding of COVID-19-related public contracts. Zweli Mkhize has denied any personal wrongdoing, but has apologised for how the corruption scandals negatively impacted the government's pushback against the pandemic. The Special Investigating Unit is looking into the appointment of a company headed by Mkhize's former personal assistant and secretary to provide government communication services. The firm received more than 9 million euros of state funds. President Cyril Ramaphosa has vowed to come down hard on graft. And staying with South Africa, on Tuesday, President Ramaphosa outlined his vision for an environmentally sustainable response to the economic fallout of COVID-19. He was speaking at a virtual meeting of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. Africa accounts for a tiny proportion of the world's CO2 emissions, but is preparing an ambitious project to tackle the global issue. Sam Bradpiece tells us more.
This committee was created by the African Union in 2009 and seeks to ensure that member states have a unified voice when it comes to global climate change negotiations. President Ramaphosa outlined, really, that the African continent is disproportionately affected by climate change. This despite the fact that, according to most scientific estimates, sub-Saharan Africa has produced just 1 to 3% of all global CO2 emissions since 1750. Now, the president also outlined his support for an initiative which seeks to build a sustainable and ecological recovery from the economic fallout of COVID-19.
The African Green Stimulus Program seeks, in the end, to harness the opportunities of a green recovery through a more coordinated approach and the scaling up of resource mobilization, capacity building, and technology development.
While it's too early to know exactly how much each member state would invest in such a programme, its premise is quite simple. Through massive public investment in green sectors such as climate-smart agriculture and renewable energy, there would be job creation, economic growth, and ultimately a green and sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic.
The US has brought in visa restrictions on those it believes are standing in the way of a peaceful resolution of Cameroon's violent Anglophone crisis. English-speaking regions have been in conflict with state forces since 2017 as secessionists try to force a breakaway from the largely francophone government. Thousands have died and both sides been accused of committing atrocities. Regina Sondo tells us more.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has announced visa restrictions on individuals the U.S. believes to be responsible for or complicit in undermining the peaceful resolution of the crisis in the English-speaking regions of Cameroon. He reiterated the U.S.'s call for the Cameroon government and the armed separatist groups to end the violence and engage in a dialogue without preconditions to end the crisis peacefully. He did not mention which individuals might be affected by the visa restrictions. Human rights lawyer Agbo Kongo spoke to me today. He says he welcomes the move by Washington and he hopes it goes further.
It's a wonderful initiative. It's a laudable initiative that has to be supported by each and everyone who's a friend of Cameroon. But we need to go beyond non-issuance of visas. And I believe that if they can freeze the accounts of the very persons who are sponsoring this senseless war, those who are inciting violence, be they in the military or politicians or non-state arms groups which have taken up arms against government, then that would go a long way to help.
More than 3,500 people have died and about 700,000 people displaced because of the violence in the restive English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Human rights groups have accused the Cameroonian army and English-speaking separatist fighters of committing atrocities.
Regina Sondo there for us. Now, tremors from the devastating volcanic eruption in DR Congo last month have subsided, and people from the city of Goma have started returning. About 400,000 fled after Mount Nyiragongo blew its top, killing at least 30 people and devastating homes. Our story is now by Nicolas Chemin and Justin Kabumba.
Goma residents have started the journey home. They fled their city last month after the eruption of the Nyiragongo volcano. Many had come here in the town of Massacre. The eruption left 32 people dead, according to the government. The authorities provided buses for those who'd been displaced and said there was no reason to fear returning to Goma.
Pas de problème à Goma. L'OVG a fini les investigations sur les fissures, l'investigation de la ligne qui était de la coulée de lave. Il n'y a pas de danger direct sur Goma. Goma, hakuna matata, que les gens soient les bienvenus.
For nearly 2 weeks, these displaced people were faced with a shortage of food and water and cases of cholera.
Tunateseka sana baba, tuliteseka sana, kuishi kwa watu ni magumu, hatuna shamba, hatuna buchuruzi, maanake tulisumbuka. Kurudia kwangu leo nasikia kinyongo juu, mimi natoka sijui kuenenda fikia ndakula bitu gani.
Buses will fetch displaced people in different villages in the coming days. The return home will not be easy as lava has damaged the water and electricity networks in Goma. In all, the eruption forced 400,000 residents to flee their home. According to humanitarian organizations, some 160,000 people have already gone back to North Kivu's main city.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.